They said I was the last one standing. I didn't feel like standing. Not today. Not here. Not after what I just saw. The fluorescent lights above hummed low, a steady, nervous buzz that seemed to sync with my own heartbeat. I walked past my desk, the one I had carved out like a little kingdom in this high-rise jungle, and froze. My fingers twitched, reaching for the keyboard, but it wasn't there. All my files, every report, every carefully curated spreadsheet, erased. Gone. Like they had never existed. I could hear it. The faint drip of the coffee machine in the break room, the subtle hum of the HVAC kicking in, the distant scrape of a chair. The smell of burnt coffee hung in the air. It should have been comforting, that familiar bitterness, but instead it pressed against me like a warning. I ran my hand along the edge of my desk, the smooth wood under my palm offering no comfort. The space I'd fought to claim, the place I'd built with my hours, my energy, my blood and sweat, felt foreign. No, not today, I whispered under my breath. I sank into the chair, leather cold against my thighs, and stared at the blank screen. My reflection looked back at me, eyes wide, jaw tight. I looked like betrayal. I felt like betrayal. Who did this? Who had the audacity to wipe away my work, as if I were nothing? My mind raced, heartbeat hammering against my ribs. It was too quiet, leaving space for my thoughts to run wild. I thought about the weeks behind me. Every meeting, every late night, every project I'd poured my heart into. The smiles I forced, the microaggressions swallowed like bitter pills. And now, this slap, this erasure. I clenched my fists until my nails bit into my palms. The tension in my shoulders, the sour taste in my mouth, the ache in my chest, all of it building, coiling, like a storm I couldn't yet release. They can't do this. Not me. The words echoed inside my skull. Shadows from the blinds stretched across the floor, jagged and sharp, like bars. I followed them with my eyes, imagining walls someone wanted to trap me behind. But I wasn't trapped. Not yet. The office was silent, the kind of silence that screams. I took a sip of coffee, too bitter, grounding. The warmth ran through my fingers, reminding me I was still here, still breathing, still me. My phone buzzed. I jumped. A message. Watch your back. I laughed, bitter, a sound that bounced off the walls, mocking. My reflection grinned back at me, sarcastic, daring. I wanted to throw something, break something, make someone feel the chaos they tried to inflict. But instead, I leaned back, listening, not to the hum of the lights or the distant HVAC, but to the steady rhythm of my own breathing. Not today, I whispered again. I stood, pacing in front of the blank screen, plotting, calculating. Every step echoed, a drumbeat announcing the storm coming. My work might be gone, my trust shredded, but I was still standing, still alive, still me. I touched the edge of my desk again, fingertips grazing the cold surface. I imagined the files somewhere, maybe in some hidden folder, maybe shredded, maybe floating in someone's smug inbox. Doesn't matter. I would find them, or I would make them regret touching them. Quietly, smartly, with fire beneath the calm. The lights above flickered, sharp, staccato, like the drumbeat of my thoughts. I pictured their faces, the ones who did this, the smirks, the whispers, the satisfaction. Every single one of them was about to learn something. Storms come quietly. They strike precisely, and they remember. My reflection on the monitor's black glass seemed to grin. I leaned closer, pressing my forehead against it, cold against my skin, and whispered, "They don't know who they messed with." Sevens? The bitterness of the coffee mixed with adrenaline in my mouth. I realized something essential. I was done being a victim. Every erased file, every slight, every whispered comment, it was fuel. I would return the favor, not with chaos, but with precision. I exhaled slowly, letting the tension in my body coil into a quiet, simmering rage. My chair creaked as I leaned back, eyes fixed on the black screen. My reflection stared right back at me, unflinching, knowing. "Not today, not ever," I whispered one last time. The last woman in the room was awake. She was watching. She was waiting. Would you walk away or fight back? Tell me in the comments. Sevens. The conference room smelled faintly of lemon polish and stale coffee. The fluorescent lights overhead hummed softly, casting stripes across the long table like silent witnesses. I slid into my chair, leather creaking beneath me, and tried to steady my breathing. Every movement, every small sound in this room, chairs scraping against the carpet, pens scratching on paper, laptops clicking open, felt amplified. The meeting had started, and there he was. My boss. Smiling, hands clasped, leaning slightly forward. My work, the analysis, the strategy, the months I'd poured into this presentation, was laid out across the projector screen. And there he was, taking credit. As you can see, this initiative, my team, under my direction, has driven these results, he said, voice smooth, confident, practiced. I could feel my jaw tighten. The tension radiated from my chest up to my throat. Every eye in the room flicked toward him, nodded, murmured agreement. And yet, I could see the micro moments, the tiny slips that betrayed them. A raised brow, a subtle shift in weight, a half smile that didn't quite reach the eyes. They knew. Some of them knew. I pressed my fingers to the table, nails digging lightly into the wood, and let my gaze roam. Each colleague's posture told a story. One leaned back, arms crossed tight, eyes flicking to me for acknowledgement. Another tapped a pen rhythmically, a nervous habit I recognized. The intern, wide-eyed and shy, fidgeted with the corner of a notebook. I didn't flinch. Not outwardly. I let the anger coil quietly inside me, a low hum, a silent drumbeat. I could feel it, sharp and controlled, a weapon waiting. I let the boss talk, letting him fill the room with words that weren't his own. Patience, I whispered under my breath. Let them show themselves. Sevens? The projector clicked, shifting to the next slide. Charts, numbers, projections I'd spent nights perfecting. He gestured toward the screen, his hand slicing the air as if he had built every cell, every formula. I caught the slight quiver in his right hand when he thought no one would see, the subtle tapping of his foot beneath the table. Confidence performed poorly when someone else had written the script. I watched every reaction. The subtle glance from the junior analyst, a flicker of guilt or recognition. The COO nodding, lips pressed tight, eyes briefly meeting mine before flicking away. Each micro-expression, each gesture, a tiny chink in the armor my boss wore. I noted them all. Each one a potential ally, a weakness, or leverage. My lips pressed together, barely moving, muttering silent lines to myself. They'll remember. They'll see. My hands stayed folded, resting on the table, tense but composed. Controlled anger. Strategy. I knew the power of calm observation. He paused, letting the room absorb his words, waiting for approval, for the affirmation that only those in power crave. The subtle hum of the lights filled the silence. Pens scratched. A laptop lid snapped shut, then clicked open again. I could feel the rhythm of the room, the tension coiling like a spring ready to snap. I leaned back slightly, letting my chair squeak just enough to make it human, letting them all know I was present, watching, aware. The temperature in the room felt hotter, the air thick with whispered judgments, unspoken agreements, suppressed disapproval. "Any questions?" he asked, voice smooth, almost teasing. The room hesitated. Then the whispers began. Soft, murmuring, half-formed critiques, hints of doubt. I caught the flicker of annoyance in his eyes, the brief tightening of his jaw. Victory doesn't always roar. Sometimes it whispers, unnoticed. I imagined my next move, carefully threading through each reaction, each micro-expression. Strategy. Patience. Precision. My anger was a tool, sharpened and ready, but held in check. I would wait for the right moment, let him overextend, reveal his weakness, and I would strike, not in chaos, but with undeniable truth. I sipped my coffee slowly, letting the warmth anchor me. The bitter taste reminded me of the grind, the nights alone, the sacrifices. It was fuel now, a reminder that this wasn't just about pride, it was about justice, recognition, and reclaiming what was mine. "Stay calm. Wait," I whispered. The boss droned on, citing numbers I had gathered, proposals I had designed. Each word, each gesture, each false smile revealed more about him than he knew. His eyes occasionally flicked to mine, searching for a reaction. Did he suspect? Did he know how aware I was? I met his gaze steadily, letting it linger, letting the silence stretch just long enough to make him uncomfortable. Not a word, not a twitch, just presence. Controlled power. I could feel it ripple through the room, subtle but undeniable. As the meeting drew on, the tension mounted. Each sentence he took credit for was a brick in a wall he thought was unassailable. But I saw the cracks. I cataloged each one, quietly, meticulously. My plan was forming. Not here, not now, but in shadows, in whispers, in precise steps no one could anticipate. The faint hum of the fluorescent lights, the clicking of pens, the rustle of papers, the quiet breathing of the room, it all became a rhythm, a score for the scene unfolding. I was in it fully, observing, calculating, patient. I would wait for him to overreach, to expose himself. And then, sevens. I smiled, barely, almost imperceptibly, controlled, quiet, dangerous. Soon, very soon. I breathed under my own breath, letting the anticipation build. The meeting ended with nods and polite applause, but I stayed seated a moment longer, letting the residual tension settle like dust in the air. I rose slowly, chair creaking, eyes sweeping the room. They were all watching, some aware, some blissfully ignorant. But I had seen everything. I had noted everything. The last woman in the room didn't just survive. She watched. She waited. She prepared. Be honest. What would you do if it was you sitting in that room? Drop your thoughts below. I want to hear you. Suspense. The office was quiet now, almost too quiet. The hum of the air conditioning filled the empty space, a steady undertone to my thoughts. My desk glowed softly under the pale light of my monitor, reflections bouncing across the sleek black surface. I leaned forward, fingertips grazing the keyboard, feeling the subtle ridges of the keys beneath my skin, each one a promise of action, a potential weapon in the right hands. I opened my laptop, the familiar chime echoing faintly in the still room. My files were scattered, hidden, some encrypted, some cleverly disguised. My heart pulsed with quiet exhilaration. This was my domain, my code, my rules. I ran my fingers along the trackpad, scrolling through logs and buried directories, each line of text a breadcrumb trail to the story only I could tell. Every hidden file, every timestamp, every access log, it was all here, waiting for me to orchestrate the reveal. They won't see it coming, I whispered under my breath, almost inaudible, a thrill curling in my chest. The fluorescent lights flickered intermittently, casting stripes across the office floor and bouncing off the polished surfaces of monitors and glass partitions. My reflection stared back at me from the darkened screen, a calm mask hiding a storm of calculation. I traced my own face with my eyes, the tight jaw, the narrowed gaze, and felt the quiet confidence settle like armor. I typed slowly, deliberately. Each keystroke echoed, soft yet definite, in the emptiness. Letters and numbers flowed across the screen, a subtle ballet of code, perfectly disguised as routine updates. Every scroll wheel click, every subtle drag of the mouse, every minor adjustment of the cursor was precise, controlled. Nothing was wasted. Nothing left to chance. I glanced at the office around me. Empty chairs, papers stacked neatly, or seemingly neatly pens left half-capped, sticky notes with reminders scrawled in familiar hands. The faint scent of burnt coffee lingered, mingled with the polished sterility of the desks. I took it all in. The subtle vibrations of the air conditioner, the distant scrape of a janitor's cart, the whisper of my own breathing. My plan was meticulous. Hidden within lines of code, innocuous on the surface, lay the evidence, the proof, the undeniable truth. Months of data, emails, performance logs, carefully copied and encrypted, ready to burst into clarity at exactly the right moment. I leaned back in my chair, feeling the smooth leather against my back, the tension in my shoulders coiling and uncoiling with anticipation. Scrolling through the folders again, I checked every variable, every line of script. One misstep and the reveal would be compromised. I calculated probabilities silently, running mental simulations. Who would notice what? Who would question a sudden anomaly? Who would glance at the wrong screen at the wrong moment? Patience. Precision. Timing. A soft tap of a key echoed as I hit a final piece, a line of code so subtle that it would blend seamlessly into the daily operations, yet trigger a cascade of revelation when executed. My fingers paused, hovering above the keyboard. The thrill of control ran through me, a quiet, dangerous satisfaction. I could hear the distant hum of the office, the subtle clicks and whirs of computers left running, the faint scratch of a pen on a page in the floor below. Every sound was a rhythm I could follow, a heartbeat of the environment, a backdrop to my orchestration. I tested a few lines of code silently, double-checked each dependency, imagined the eventual unfolding. The reveal would arrive like a storm breaking, precise and undeniable. No chaos, no theatrics, just truth, waiting to be discovered. Patience, let it breathe, I murmured, leaning closer to the screen, eyes scanning the final lines, lips barely moving. My reflection blinked back, almost imperceptibly, a silent accomplice in my own game. I tapped a key, then scrolled back up, retracing my steps. Every keystroke, every command, every hidden flag was exactly where it needed to be. I visualized the reactions, the shock, the hesitation, the moment when the pieces would finally click for everyone else. It was like watching dominoes, knowing the first one would fall perfectly. The office seemed to hold its breath with me. The faint hum of electronics, the soft rhythm of the air conditioning, the distant echoes of cleaning carts, all conspired to create a stage, silent yet alive, for the drama about to unfold. My heartbeat matched the rhythm, slow, deliberate, controlled. I leaned back, fingertips brushing the edge of my desk, feeling the polished wood under my touch. Everything was aligned. Every line of code, every hidden file, every subtle manipulation of the system was in place. The reveal would be unstoppable, elegant. I had built it for patience, for precision, for undeniable impact. Scrolling one last time, I paused, eyes flicking to the darkened office, to the faint reflections of myself in the monitors around me. The thrill of the unknown, the suspense, the quiet power, it all coiled tightly in my chest, every second until the reveal would stretch, taut and electric. Soon, very soon, I whispered, almost smiling to myself, letting the silence of the office answer back. I shut the laptop lid slowly, deliberately, the soft click echoing like a drumbeat of inevitability. My reflection faded from the screen, leaving only the faint glow of the monitors nearby. The office seemed empty, sterile, silent, but it wasn't. Not really. It was alive, humming with anticipation, holding its breath with me, waiting. The last woman in the room wasn't just observing anymore. She was orchestrating. She was preparing. And when the time came, everything would unfold exactly as she had designed it. You won't believe what happens next. Hit subscribe so you don't miss it. The office buzzed with a low, constant hum, fluorescent lights flickering softly above, their glow reflecting off the glossy monitors like silent witnesses. I sat just inside the corner of the conference room, invisible in the shadows, watching. Chairs scraped gently across the carpet, pens clicked, laptops opened and closed in rhythm, a subtle orchestra of office life. Every sound, every flicker, every movement was a piece of the puzzle. My boss leaned back in his chair, arms crossed, lips pressed tight, eyes scanning the reports I had carefully compiled. He didn't know that every number he cited, every chart he presented, had been slightly manipulated, not in accuracy, but in timing. The reveal was already in motion. He was doing exactly what I had planned. Every gesture, every unconscious nod, every approving glance from his team reinforced the pattern I had coded. I let my fingers rest lightly on the edge of the table, feeling the smooth wood beneath my palm. The tactile sensation grounded me, even as my mind raced, calculating probabilities, observing micro-expressions, noting body language. The junior analyst tapped a pen nervously against the table, a half smile tugging at her lips as she glanced toward my boss. The COO leaned forward, eyes narrowing, eyebrows rising just slightly, not at my boss, but at the data that was about to speak louder than words. "They're all playing into it," I murmured under my breath, letting a faint smile curl at the corners of my lips. I scanned the room again, slow, deliberate. The subtle tension in the air was almost tangible. Every whispered comment, Every half-concealed eye roll, every unconscious adjustment of posture was information. I cataloged it all in my mind, mental logs stacked neatly. Who would notice what first? Who would hesitate? Who would overreact? My excitement simmered beneath a layer of calm, controlled, deliberate, patient. The blinds cast long, angled shadows across the carpet, slicing the room into geometric sections. I watched colleagues shift within these light and shadow lines, gestures fluid, unconscious. The intern's hands fidgeted at her notebook, tapping lightly, eyes darting, catching the reflections of the monitors. She had no idea she was already part of the stage I had set. The hum of computers, the soft scratch of pens, the distant echo of elevators, all of it formed a rhythm, a metronome to my calculations. Each sound a cue, a beat in the suspenseful sequence unfolding. I traced the rhythm in my mind, mentally adjusting the timing of my reveal. Everything had to hit perfectly. My boss gestured toward the chart on the screen. His hand sliced the air, pointing at a figure I had carefully highlighted. He thought it was his own observation. It was not. He had unknowingly activated a hidden marker embedded in my code. The ripple of realization was coming, and he didn't even suspect it yet. I sipped my coffee slowly, savoring the bitter warmth. It steadied me, reminded me that I was here, fully present, fully aware. My reflection in the darkened monitor flickered, ghost-like. I caught the tension in my own jaw, the slight flare of nostrils, the narrowing of eyes, and I let it fuel me further. Not long now, not long at all, I whispered softly. Every colleague, oblivious to my observation, became a participant. The subtle shift of a shoulder, the clearing of a throat, the tiny intake of breath as someone noticed a discrepancy I had planted, all fed into my mental map of what would happen next. My mind raced ahead, seeing the cascade before it happened, noting the precise moment each domino would fall. The fluorescent lights flickered again, and for a heartbeat, the office seemed suspended. I could hear my own heartbeat, a quiet drum under the ambient sounds. My lips pressed into a thin line, suppressing a thrill that threatened to break the calm exterior. My suppressed anger coiled alongside it, a dual force driving my patience. I watched the COO tap a pen against her notebook, then glance briefly at my boss. Her expression betrayed a flicker of curiosity, an almost imperceptible tightening around the eyes and mouth. I cataloged it, storing it for later impact. The tiniest movements, the smallest micro-expressions, would magnify the moment of revelation. I leaned back slightly, chair creaking, feeling the subtle vibration through the floor as footsteps echoed in the hall outside. The temperature of the room felt heavier now, thick with anticipation, though no one else seemed aware. My own controlled breathing, the slow rhythm of my fingers against the table, became a counterpoint to the rising tension. Every piece, every detail, I murmured softly. Perfect. The boss scribbled a note, pen scratching, oblivious to the coded trap already unfolding. His eyes flicked to mine, searching, questioning, unaware that I had already seen his weakness, measured it, and placed my strategy perfectly. Every smile, every nod, every half-hearted affirmation he offered now played into the crescendo I had orchestrated. I let my gaze drift across the room one last time, noting the subtle tilt of heads, the crossed arms, the tiny shifts in posture, the quick glances between colleagues. All unintentional cues, all reinforcing the stage I had set. Every unconscious gesture was a building block in the reveal. The hum of monitors, the soft whir of ventilation, the distant echo of keys clicking downstairs, they all became the soundtrack to my careful orchestration. My thrill of control, quiet but electric, coursed through me. I felt the rise of anticipation, a wave of confidence surging just beneath the surface, tempered with patience, tempered with silence. I straightened in my chair, fingers interlacing on the tabletop. The room felt like it held its breath. I could sense the moment approaching, the tipping point where all my calculations, all my preparations, would converge. Soon, very soon, I whispered again, letting the words hang in the air, unheard, like a promise. The office lights flickered once more, shadows shifting across the monitors. The colleagues, the boss, the chairs, the papers, the subtle hums and clicks, all unwitting participants in my invisible design, continued their motions, reinforcing the trap I had so carefully laid. The last woman in the room wasn't just watching. She was shaping. She was guiding. And the reveal, inevitable and precise, was only moments away. The office was almost silent now, a low hum of electronics filling the space, punctuated by the soft click of keyboards and the occasional scrape of a chair. Fluorescent lights overhead cast pale stripes across the polished surfaces, reflections shifting as I moved. I positioned myself just so, leaning into the corner of my desk where the glow of my monitor illuminated only me, the rest of the office bathed in shadows. The evidence was all ready. Months of data, emails, performance logs, buried in innocuous folders, encrypted and hidden in plain sight. The code I had crafted was finalized, precise, flawless. Each line a thread in a web that would pull together at exactly the right moment. I ran my fingers over the keyboard lightly, feeling the smooth, familiar keys under my fingertips, and let my mind run through the sequence again. Timing, placement, reaction, everything in place, I whispered softly. I visualized the reactions. The boss leaning back, smug, eyes scanning numbers that would suddenly no longer belong solely to him. The COO's faint raise of an eyebrow, the junior analyst's tentative glance toward the screen, the intern's widened eyes as the pieces fell together. Each face, each micro-expression, cataloged in my mind like notes in a score. I scrolled through the hidden logs one more time, fingers tracing the lines carefully, checking the sequences, the triggers embedded in the code. A small smile tugged at my lips as I watched the automated alerts, the invisible markers I had planted, each poised to ignite the reveal. Every minor gesture, every click of a mouse, every pen tap could now serve as an unwitting signal. The office itself had become a stage. The fluorescent lights flickered again, casting long, angled shadows across the carpet. I leaned back slightly, chair creaking under my weight, and breathed in the faint scent of burnt coffee lingering from the break room. The air felt heavier now, thick with anticipation. Every small sound, the hum of the monitors, the faint whir of ventilation, the distant shuffle of papers, amplified in my awareness. I ran through the sequence in my mind, imagining each colleague in motion. The boss, pointing at a figure on the screen, unaware of the anomaly embedded in the data. His posture, leaning forward, a subtle tap of the pen against his notebook. Every gesture, every unconscious motion, feeding the crescendo I had designed. I took a slow sip of coffee, letting the bitterness anchor me, grounding my racing thoughts. Heartbeat steady, calculated, yet surging with excitement beneath the surface. This was not panic. This was anticipation, a thrill tempered by patience and control. My eyes flicked to the reflection of myself in the darkened monitor. Calm, composed, confident. The storm was contained. I moved the cursor, hovered over the final folder containing the key evidence. Fingers poised. I paused, feeling the slight vibration of the laptop as it hummed beneath me. I imagined the moment of execution. The code triggers. The hidden logs become visible. The files appear where they cannot be ignored. Faces in the room, shifting from smug satisfaction to shock, confusion, awe. The tension would be instantaneous, palpable. Not long now, I murmured, almost smiling. Every minor movement was deliberate. Sliding the mouse slightly, tapping keys lightly to maintain the facade of normalcy, the fluorescent hum seemed to sync with my heartbeat. My breathing slowed, measured. The anticipation tightened in my chest, coiling like a spring ready to release. I could see it all, perfectly. The subtle stiffening of my boss's shoulders, the micro-expression of the COO, the intern's tentative glance toward the screen, the ripple of comprehension spreading through the team. I leaned closer to the monitor, fingertips brushing the keys, adjusting timing and placement with precision. Each action was calculated, deliberate, a choreography of subtle manipulation. The thrill of control ran quietly beneath the surface, restrained yet electric. I imagined the reactions. Whispers cutting across the room, the sudden silence as understanding dawned, the shock, the disbelief, the realization that this had all been prepared, orchestrated with careful patience. The office shadows shifted again as a colleague moved past, unaware of the invisible trap, a hand brushing the edge of my desk. I felt the vibration through the polished surface, noting every detail, every sound. Timing was perfect. Precision perfect. The code was perfect. My patience had led to this. I breathed slowly, letting my heartbeat sync with the rhythm of the office. The reflections in the monitors, the soft hum of electronics, the faint scratches of pens across paper, all became part of the moment, part of the symphony I had conducted in secret. My lips curved in a subtle, confident smile. One last check. I scrolled through the hidden logs, verified triggers, ensured sequences aligned perfectly. Every element of evidence in position. Every reaction anticipated. Every timing measured. I leaned back, chair creaking softly, eyes scanning the room, mentally rehearsing the crescendo. Soon, very soon, I whispered again, letting the words hang like a promise in the air, unheard but absolute. The last woman in the room wasn't just preparing. She was ready. Every subtle gesture, every line of code, every quiet observation had built to this moment. When it came, it would be flawless, precise, devastating in its clarity. And I would watch, fully present, fully aware, as the room shifted under the weight of truth finally revealed. If you've ever been overlooked or underpaid, this part's for you. And if you feel that, hit that. Sevens. The conference room smelled faintly of polish and coffee, a tension hanging in the air that seemed to vibrate off the walls. Fluorescent lights cast pale stripes across the polished table, reflecting off monitors, pens, and glasses, making the room glimmer like a stage. I stood at the head of the table, laptop open, fingers poised. The evidence, hidden for months, was ready to speak. I looked at them, the boss, smug as ever, CEO's expectant eyes scanning, colleagues leaning slightly forward, pens in hand, eyes bright with curiosity or perhaps unease. Every micro-expression was cataloged in my mind. The slight narrowing of an eyebrow, the unconscious tilt of a head, the minute clench of a jaw. Each one a note in the crescendo I had orchestrated. I clicked the first key. A soft chime echoed, subtle, but enough to draw attention. The files appeared on the shared screen, a cascade of logs, emails, and data charts, highlighted strategically to trace months of erasure and manipulation. The boss leaned forward, his smile faltering, eyes widening slightly. A shadow of hesitation crossed his face, unguarded, unprepared. I felt a thrill, low and steady, running beneath the surface. Controlled, precise. This was the culmination, the payoff. I took a breath and let my voice cut through the office hum. I think it's time we all take a closer look at how this project was really handled. Whispers rippled across the room. Pens tapped nervously, a subtle shuffle of papers. Monitors reflected their faces, catching every flicker of surprise, the small tightening of lips, the slight lean forward to see better. The boss's hand twitched, reaching instinctively toward the data, as if trying to reassert control. But the screen was already speaking, numbers and emails lining up to tell a story he could no longer claim. His eyes darted to me briefly, a flash of panic, then to the CEO, who had frozen mid-nod, absorbing the cascade. I scrolled slowly, deliberately, letting each piece of evidence breathe. Each click of the mouse echoed softly, punctuating the moment. The subtle whir of ventilation, the faint hum of monitors, the tap of a pen somewhere at the far end of the table, they became the rhythm of revelation. "Watch closely. This is everything," I whispered under my breath, almost to myself, almost inaudible. Colleagues leaned in, some mouths opening slightly, some eyes widening, others frowning, brows furrowed. The micro-expressions, so small, so fleeting, were delicious to observe. The junior analyst's hand froze mid-note, the COO's shoulders stiffened, the intern blinked rapidly, the tension visible in every posture. I let it build. Patience was part of the strategy. Each second stretched, deliberate. Each subtle hesitation on their faces heightened the impact. Every small gesture reinforced the reality. The manipulation, the erasure, the deliberate undermining, all documented, undeniable. I moved to the next set of files. Charts highlighting who had been excluded from projects, spreadsheets showing reassignment of work, emails flagged with timestamps proving intent. The boss's eyes flicked up, mouth opening, closing. He tried to speak, but I held a finger lightly to the keyboard, pausing only long enough for him to feel the weight of the room. "Not so fast," I murmured softly, a quiet satisfaction curling in my chest. The CEO shifted slightly, leaning forward, eyes narrowing, absorbing the truth in silence. Whispers began to ripple now, colleagues exchanging stunned glances, heads tilting, shoulders tensing, the subtle body language of realization. Some nodded slowly, others froze. Shock, hesitation, awe. I could see it all, perfectly, unfolding exactly as I had anticipated. My heart beat steadily, calm on the surface, but a quiet surge of triumph ran through me. Every calculation, every line of code, every hidden log had delivered exactly what I had designed. I highlighted the final piece, a time-stamped email where my boss had explicitly reassigned my work, claiming credit publicly. The CEO's eyes flicked rapidly between me and the screen, the air thickening with anticipation. The boss stammered, his voice faltering, lips pressing tightly. He had been caught, and he knew it. Every subtle gesture told the story. The clenching of fists, the slight bite of the lower lip, the involuntary shift in posture. I had watched and waited long enough. The room, filled with reflections off monitors and glasses, bathed in pale stripes of fluorescent light, became a theater for truth. I leaned forward slightly, fingers tapping lightly against the edge of the laptop, and whispered under my breath, "Time to face it." Seven's eyes met mine now, wide, unblinking. Whispers floated across the room, half disbelief, half acknowledgement. The boss's shoulders slumped imperceptibly, lips pressing tighter, jaw stiffening. The CEO exhaled slowly, absorbing the undeniable pattern of evidence. Colleagues shifted in their chairs, pens set down, eyes fixed. I allowed a small smile, calm, precise, as the room adjusted to the reality I had orchestrated. Triumph wasn't loud. It was measured, subtle, devastating in its clarity. The cascade of revelation continued. Each line of code, each log, each document revealed, layer by layer, the months of erasure and manipulation. Each micro-expression in the room reflected the weight of truth landing. Shock, hesitation, recognition, finally, understanding. I leaned back slightly, breathing slow, steady, and allowed the silence to settle. The hum of electronics, the faint scrape of a chair, the whisper of a pen, every sound became part of the aftermath, a subtle punctuation to the orchestration I had executed flawlessly. The last woman in the room had spoken. She had waited. She had watched. She had revealed. And now, finally, the room was hers. The office had settled into an almost reverent quiet. The fluorescent lights flickered softly, casting long, gentle shadows across the polished table. Monitors reflected faces, some still shocked, others slowly processing, a few finally allowing themselves a small, understanding nod. Pens tapped absent-mindedly now, papers rustled softly, the faint hum of the HVAC underscoring the stillness. I sat back in my chair, letting the tension drain from my shoulders. Fingers tracing the smooth edge of the desk, I absorbed the room, every reflection, every subtle shift in posture, every micro-expression. The boss slumped slightly, jaw tight, shoulders heavy with accountability. The CEO's eyes softened, thoughtful, a nod of respect almost imperceptible, but undeniable. My colleagues' gazes met mine in fleeting acknowledgments. Relief, recognition, empowerment, the unspoken understanding that truth, when wielded carefully, carries weight that no power play can erase. "It's worth it," I whispered under my breath, letting the words linger like a quiet mantra. I reflected on the journey, the late nights, the erased files, the quiet frustration of being underestimated, ignored, and subtly sidelined. Every microaggression, every slight, every whispered "not a culture fit" that had haunted the hallways now crystallized into clarity. Perseverance, strategy, and integrity had carried me through. I had remained authentic, patient, and deliberate. My work had not just been noticed, it had been vindicated. I glanced at the junior analyst across the table. Her eyes, wide with awe moments ago, now carried something deeper. Inspiration, hope. The COO adjusted her posture, a subtle nod toward me, acknowledging the precision and patience that had turned months of suppression into undeniable truth. Even the interns, quiet, absorbing, their fingers hovering over notepads, understood something essential, that the integrity of your work matters, that resilience is seen even when the world tries to erase it. The light shifted slightly as the afternoon sun filtered through the blinds, casting warm streaks across the floor. I noticed reflections in the monitors, ghostly echoes of myself mirrored alongside the faces of those who had witnessed the reveal. It was a subtle reminder that authenticity leaves traces, even in spaces where it is undervalued. Every sound, every soft breath, every shuffle of papers reinforced the reality. Careful strategy combined with integrity yields power far beyond the transient authority of titles or positions. I exhaled slowly, tasting the faint bitterness of coffee still lingering in the air. Confidence, calm, patience, it was all here. I realized that the room, once a place of frustration, had become a stage for empowerment. My voice, my actions, my careful planning had shifted the dynamics of authority, truth, and respect. "We hold our own," I murmured quietly, almost to myself, thinking of every Black woman in offices like this across the country. Every slight, every erased effort, every dismissal, there is a way through. Strategy, perseverance, and honesty are the tools that turn invisibility into visibility, suppression into triumph. The office settled further. Chairs scraped softly as someone shifted, a pen clicked against a notebook, and a faint exhale rippled through the room. Each gesture, however small, carried meaning now. Faces reflected understanding, relief, even pride, not just in me, but in the principle that true work, pursued with integrity and patience, cannot be erased. I allowed myself a small, quiet smile, letting the satisfaction wash over me, not of revenge, but of justice, of truth, of resilience. This was bigger than any single office, any single boss. This was about standing firm, about showing that authenticity and perseverance matter, especially for those who are too often unseen or underestimated. As I leaned back fully, chair creaking softly under me, the room seemed to breathe with me. Light shimmered across the table, reflecting faintly in the monitors, like small glimmers of acknowledgement, hope, and empowerment. The last woman in the room had not just survived, she had illuminated the way. And in doing so, she left a mark far deeper than a single victory. "Truth works," I whispered finally, letting the words linger, echoing softly in the quiet office, a mantra for anyone watching, anyone striving, anyone who had been told they weren't enough. And in that stillness, in that quiet resonance, I knew. Integrity, strategy, and resilience are the currency of those who truly endure. The last woman in the room had spoken, and her voice would be remembered. Every challenge faced is a lesson waiting to be claimed. Every slight or doubt cast upon you only sharpens your resolve. We rise not by tearing others down, but by standing firm in our truth. Patience and strategy transform obstacles into triumphs. And the legacy of authenticity, of resilience, courage, and integrity echoes far beyond any office walls. We carry the weight of those who came before us and honor them by refusing to be erased. Every small victory compounds into a force that cannot be ignored. Our work, our voice, our presence matters, even when the world tries to overlook it. Standing tall in truth inspires others to find their own strength. Silence may protect, but courage transforms. Strategy and patience are acts of power as much as action itself. Resilience is not just surviving, it's claiming space that was denied. Integrity shapes more than outcomes. It shapes legacies. Each step taken with intention reverberates through those who follow. And in the end, those who honor their truth leave a mark that cannot be erased. Thanks for taking the time to listen to this story. If it spoke to you, hit subscribe and stay tuned for more stories that heal, inspire, and remind us who we are.